Hello, am I audible?
Hello.
Hello, can you guys hear me properly?
Yes,
Hello.
doc.
Okay, that's great, right? So today we are going to discuss our really important topic that is basal ganglia, right? Basal ganglia. Okay. So as we already discussed that while performing a motor activity, basal ganglia plays a really important role, right? So basal ganglia is basically a gray matter which is going to be present deep in your brain, right? So it is present deep in the brain, right? Okay, just keep that in mind. And it's really important for in order to undergo a proper smooth movement, we need basal ganglia. If you guys remember, I just told you, in order to have a fine movement, for example, what is fine movement? Like I'm just writing here on the whiteboard, it's a fine movement. So in fine movement, basically we are using certain group of muscles, but at the same time we are inhibiting the opposite group of muscles. For example, while I'm writing, so I'm using flexors of finger, and at the same time, the extensor of the fingers are inhibited in order to have proper movement. So this flexion at same time and at the same time inhibition of the extensor basal ganglia basically play an important role. So basal ganglia is really important for undergoing a proper smooth motor activity, right? Okay. Okay, so there are different components of, like, for example, whenever we think of an action, so first of all, the information about doing a certain action come from basal ganglia, right? Whenever you're just thinking of an action, so the first thing, the information basically comes from the basal ganglia. Then it would go back to the cerebral cortex, to the thalamus, and the final order comes through corticospinal fibers. So now it would be a little bit confusing, but let me just draw the entire pathway. Then you'll just know that what am I basically talking about. Okay, so you have different structures or different component of basal ganglia. I'm just drawing them there, right? Okay, okay, okay. So this is your cerebral cortex. Remember the areas we discussed for the motor movement? That was your primary motor cortex, your premotor cortex. We discussed different areas within the premotor cortex. You guys remember that? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this structure which I have drawn just like a a same just like a I would say pizza slice, right? So this is basically called as putamen, right? Putamen nucleus, right? So it's a gray matter which is present deep in your brain and it's called as putamen. Here we are going to be having your internal capsule. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so this putamen has, this is your putamen nucleus, and further we have two other components that are basically known as globus pallidus, right? Globus pallidus, right? So we have two globus pallidus. Globus pallidus externus, this is your externus, and globus pallidus internus. Okay, and this is your thalamus. We already know that. Okay, so let's discuss how the signals come from your cortex, right? So, for example, whenever in the cortex, let's suppose in the premotor cortex, okay, let me just tell you the entire pathway. Let's suppose an individual have kept his hand on a hot, you know, on a kind of hot, say, fire, right? If it's fire. So what would happen? First of all, the sensory sensation are going to go, the pain and the temperature in anterior lateral pathway. They are going to move upward in the ascending tracks. We know that at the level 1 to 2 segment above decussation and anterior commissure. Do you guys remember the pathway? Hello?
Yes, doc.
Okay. So it would just decussate, it would start moving upward, combined with the anterior tract, which is the crude touch, and in the end, it will just go into anteroposterior nucleus through the posterior limb of internal capsule. They are going to project into the somatosensory area, which lies behind your central cell. Remember? Hello?
Yes, doc.
Okay.
Yes.
So in the somatosensory cortex, what would happen? These informations are going to be compared with the previous informations, right? So like previously, whenever an individual kept hand on the hot fire, so he have to withdraw his hand, right? That was basically previous information. And as it's compared, the motor response is going to be generated. So the motor response is going to be generated from premotor cortex, which is basically responsible for some purposeful movement, right? But at the same time, some signals from this premotor or primary motor cortex, both of them, we know that premotor cortex is in communication with primary motor cortex. So from there, some of the fibers would move deep into basal. Yeah. Is it clear? Hello? Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Rob. Yes,
Yes,
Rob.
sir.
Okay, so these fibers which are moving from the cerebral cortex to the putamen nucleus, they are also called as corticostriatal fibers. Corticostriatal fibers. Remember, we just call this entire the basal ganglia complex sometime as striatum as well. Why do we call it striatum? Because in the middle, I have already told you here we have, your internal capsule, right? Internal capsule. So it's basically going to be seemed like a striatum. You know what is striatum or striation? Whenever we have this, as we discussed that some of our muscles are striated because they have stria, right? So it can be seen as striatum. So that's why we can just call it them as striatum as well. So corticostriatal fibers. This is your putamen, right? So from the cortex into the putamen, corticostriatal fibers, right? And these fibers are going to dump off glutamate. Remember, they're going to dump glutamate on here in the putamen nucleus. Is it clear? Hello?
Yes, doc.
Okay, perfect. Then we are going to be having another kind of fibers which will be moving here from putamen into globus pallidus internus. Here, right? Globus pallidus internus. And they would be GABAergic in nature. That is, whenever they are stimulated, they are going to release GABA. Is it clear? Hello?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Then we're going to be having next fibers from the globus pallidus internus into the thalamus, which would be again GABAergic in nature. They would release GABA once they are stimulated. And from the thalamus, again the signal would enter into the cortex, fine tuning the signal here. That would be glutaminergic in nature. That is, it would lead to stimulation of your cortex. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just make it really easy. The fibers which are coming from your brain downward and the fibers which are moving up into the brain or the cortex upward are always going to be glutaminergic, while in the middle, the fibers are going to be, or the nerves are going to be GABAergic, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just discuss this pathway. So this pathway is called as direct pathway, right? Direct pathway of your basal ganglia, right? Of basal ganglia. So whenever the glutamate is released from the cortex into the putamen, so what would it do to the next fiber? Here the GABA release is going to be more. Am I right? Because glutaminergic is stimulatory in nature and GABAergic is inhibitory in nature. We know that these neurotransmitters. So whenever the glutaminergic is released here, it would stimulate the next nerve to release a lot of GABA. Am I right?
Yes.
So here we are going to be having a lot of GABA. Okay. A lot of GABA on the next neuron is going to be having inhibitory action. Am I right?
Yes.
It means here we are going to be having less GABA being released by this next nerve. Am I right? Hello? If we have less GABA here, it means that the next nerve is going to be stimulated more because we have less inhibition. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
It means that the glutamate would be a lot, right? So can I say that, okay, if you have a lot of glutamate, it means it's going the glutamate is basically going to excite your, you know, cortex. Can I say that?
Yes.
Okay, so can I say that the direct pathway basically is stimulatory in nature? While I'm writing something, as I already told you, we are stimulating the flexors, so it's going to be due to direct pathway of your basal ganglia. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is your direct pathway, basically, right? Let me just give you an overview again. So we have two pathways, direct and indirect pathway. Direct pathway in the end is going to be having stimulatory effect on your cortex, which is going to be leading to stimulatory or action of the muscles, right? While the indirect pathway. So let's discuss indirect pathway again, right? So this is your cortex, cerebral cortex. Okay. Again, your putamen, globus pallidus externus and internus. But then we'll be having our subthalamus, our thalamus. Okay. So initially the fibers are going to be coming from here into the putamen, right? From the putamen, this time the next fibers won't go into globus pallidus internus, but they would go into the globus pallidus internus, right? From the globus pallidus internus, they are going to move into the subthalamus. From the subthalamus, they are going to move into the globus pallidus internus. From the globus pallidus internus, the next group of nerves are going to move into the thalamus, and from the thalamus, they are going to enter into the
Cortex.
cortex. So this is basically your indirect pathway. Direct pathway. Is it clear?
Can you take it again? It's
Okay.
wrong, but
First of all, the fibers are going to come here down into the putamen. Okay.
mm-hmm.
The next fibers from the putamen are going to move into the globus pallidus externus. Is it clear?
Okay, yes, it's clear.
From the globus pallidus okay, here we were seeing they were directly moving into globus pallidus internus. Here they are
Mhm.
moving into globus pallidus externus.
Externus first and
From the
then
externus, they are going to move into the subthalamus. Subthalamus, they are
thalamus.
present below the thalamus, right?
Yes,
From the subthalamus, fibers are going to project into globus pallidus internus.
thalamus.
From
Okay,
internus, again, they are going to move into the,
thalamus.
and from the thalamus into the cortex.
Cortex.
Is that clear?
That's very clear. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. So these fibers are going to be glutaminergic in nature because they are just projecting downward. They are going to be GABAergic in nature. They are also going to be GABAergic in nature. But these fibers which are entering into the globus pallidus internus are going to be glutaminergic in nature, while the other again are going to be GABAergic in nature, and those which are projecting upward are going to be glutaminergic. Is it clear? Hello?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Glutaminergic, glutamate release, GABAergic, GABA release, again glutamate release, GABA release, and glutamate release. So let's discuss what's going to happen whenever this pathway is activated. So for example, if from the cortex, the glutaminergic pathway is activated into the putamen, it means it is stimulatory in nature. So the GABA is going to be really high in the next nerve. Am I right? So if the GABA is really high here, so the next nerve is going to be inhibited more. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
So it means GABA is going to be really less here. Hello?
Yeah.
Because more GABA here and the back of, or this nerve is going to be having a more inhibition. More inhibition means that this nerve is going to be making less GABA, right? Less GABA here is going to be less inhibition, so glutamate is going to be more,
Increase.
Yeah.
right? More glutamate. If we have more glutamate, the GABA here is going to, okay, we are exciting this nerve a lot. So the GABA here is going to be a lot, right? Hello?
Yeah.
Follow.
Okay, and this GABA basically is going to be having more inhibition, right? So the glutamate here is going to be really less, right? So in the end, in the cortex, we are having less glutamate, that is less excitation, or I can say more inhibition, right? So you can
Yes,
see that indirect pathway basically is inhibitory in nature. In the end, it's going to cause inhibition. Am I right?
that is correct.
Or I would say less excitation. So the opposite group of muscle during fine movement, like while I was writing, I just told you that we are just using the flexors, or we are stimulating the flexor, and at the same time, the extensor are inhibited. The extensor are inhibited due to indirect pathway of your basal ganglia. Is it clear? Hello.
Yes.
Do you want me to repeat this pathway again?
Yes.
Okay. This is
Yes,
going to
doc.
be energetic pathway. The other is GABAergic pathway. And this is GABAergic pathway, glutaminergic pathway, GABAergic pathway, and glutaminergic. So the pathways which are moving down or which are moving up are going to be glutaminergic. This one is moving up. It's also going to be glutaminergic. That's the only exception you have to keep in mind, right? More glutamate, more excitation, more GABA release, more GABA release on this. Okay, so this is your first nerve, your second nerve, I would say. So in the second nerve, you're going to be having more GABA release. More GABA release is going to be meaning that the third is going to be inhibited more. So less GABA is going to be released in the third. If less GABA is going to be released in the third, it means that the fourth nerve is going to be, okay, less GABA, less inhibition, so more excitation, more glutamate. Is it clear? More glutamate here, so the fifth nerve is going to be stimulated more, and it's going to be making GABA more. More GABA meaning that next nerve, the sixth nerve, is going to be inhibited more. In the end, we have inhibition of glutamate, less excitation in the cortex, or I would say more inhibition. Less excitation means more inhibition, right? That's going to be your indirect pathway. Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's discuss our really important, okay. Another thing. This is your subthalamus. Whenever the subthalamus is, we have some problems with the subthalamus. If you get degeneration of the subthalamus, we are going to be having a pathology called as hemiplegismus, right? So this is going to be one of your U-word MCQ. You guys might have done it with Dr. Hassan. What is hemiplegismus? Do you guys have any idea? It's going to be a ballistic movement of your upper extremities, right? For example, the shoulder. So this guy is going to, just fling back his shoulder. He's going to be just more having a lot of movements in the shoulder areas, right? In the shoulder area.
Is
Okay.
moving all the limbs.
And the proximal kind of limbs you can see, right? So you can just have a search. So you would just know it, like on YouTube, you can see an individual hemiplegismus. So you would have an idea, right? That's basically due to problems with subthalamus. One of you would have, right? So the next pathology which we are going to discuss in detail, but we have some time here as well, which is known as Parkinson disease, right? Parkinson disease. Okay, remember one thing. We discussed two pathways here, the direct pathway and indirect pathway, right? Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
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 We discussed two pathways, the direct pathways and indirect pathways. Remember, we have two receptors here in the putamen as well, right? That is D1 receptors and D2 receptors, right? D1 receptor and D2 receptors on your indirect pathway. So on direct pathway, we have D1 receptors, okay? And on the indirect pathway, we have D2 receptors. So, okay, we have, something called substantia nigra, if you guys remember, right? Substantia nigra, which basically make your dopamine. You guys know that, right? Okay. Okay, so substantia nigra basically is having two components, the pars compacta and pars reticularis, right? So the pars compacta, which is compact portion of this substantia nigra basically makes dopamine, and that dopamine basically act on D2 pathway, D2 pathway in the indirect one, and D1 pathway in the direct, right?
Direct.
Dopamine. And as dopamine act on D1 pathway, it's going to lead to further stimulation. Further stimulation. Is it clear? So if I'm just stimulating this the direct pathway, so in the end I'll be having a lot of motion. Am I right? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, if
Yes.
I'm just stimulating the D1 pathway by dumping more dopamine on the D1 receptors in direct pathways, we know that the direct pathway in the end lead to stimulation, or it helps with motion, right? But if I'm further stimulating the stimulatory pathway, we are going to be having a lot of stimulation, a lot of motion, right? While in case of dopamine being dumped on your D2 pathway, it leads to inhibition. Inhibition, right? But
Mm.
for dopamine act on D2 pathway, it leads to inhibition. So now you can just think of, I'm basically inhibiting the inhibitory pathway, because we know that indirect pathway is inhibitory in nature,
Mm.
right? So can I
Yeah.
say that inhibition of inhibitory pathway is basically your excitation,
Yes.
right? So you can
Yes.
say inhibition of your inhibitory pathway is excitation, right? So can I say that D, the dopamine causes excitation in both direct and indirect pathway, right? It's
Yes.
to help movement. It's going to help an individual to move. That's all, right? It's basically going to give that kick start for movement, right? So those individuals who do not have any dopamine, that is in case of Parkinsonism, they cannot initiate a movement, right? We are going to discuss it in detail once we are doing Parkinsonism, right? So Parkinsonism, an individual won't be able to perform proper movement. They won't be able to initiate a movement. That's really important to know, right? So this was all about basal ganglia. Let's just do it from first page, right? Can you guys just tell me the page number?
Yes. Yes, I have a question. You mentioned that the substantia nigra have two parts, the pars compacta and reticularis. Which one made dopamine out of the two?
Okay, the compacta portion, the compact portion, pars compacta basically make dopamine, right?
Okay.
Okay. Can you guys just please tell me the page number of basal ganglia here in the first stage?
It is
Five.
511.
5,
11.
5, 11, right? Okay, that's great. So let's discuss it. Now it would just make a lot of sense for you guys, right? Because we did it in detail. Just think of the picture which I just drawn, right? Basal ganglia. Okay, important involuntary movement in adjusting posture. We know that. Okay. Receive cortical input, provide negative feedback to the cortex to modulate movement. Does that make sense? Hello?
Yes,
Yes.
Doc.
Okay. Striatum is your putamen plus chordate nucleus. So we have a nucleus called as chordate, which is basically just present like there is a big C kind of nucleus, chordate. That's also going to be, component of your striatum, which we haven't mentioned, right? Lentiform nucleus is putamen plus globus pallidus. So that entire, putamen, this was the putamen, these were your globus pallidus internus and externus. Collectively, this nucleus is called as
Lensiform.
lentiform nucleus. Okay. Okay. So we have direct excitatory pathway. In the end, it was causing excitation. Remember? Hello.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sure.
The cortical input was glutamate. It would release. Okay. It would stimulate the GABA in the next one, which would inhibit the GABA. Okay. Okay. Let's just read. See the picture which I have drawn. Direct pathway, cortical input, glutamate stimulate GABA release. You can see here, glutamate would stimulate the GABA release. Okay. And this more, okay, sorry, it's indirect pathway.
Bingo. Yes.
So glutamate would stimulate the GABA release, right? What would this GABA do? This GABA would further inhibit the GABA release, right? So let's see in the first state whether they're just uh, telling about inhibition or not. GABA release from the striatum, which inhibit GABA release from the GI, disinhibiting the thalamus. And as the thalamus is disinhibited, more motion because a lot of glutamate into the cortex would go. Is it clear? Hello.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
For the indirect pathway, you can see that indirect pathway have cortical input, glutaminergic. We know that stimulate the GABA release from the striatum, which inhibit GABA release from GPE, disinhibiting the STN. Okay, and STN input via glutamate stimulate the GABA release from GPI, inhibiting the thalamus, inhibiting the motion. You guys can just compare it with the pathway which I have drawn. Is it clear?
Yes. Yes, sir.
The dopamine nigrostriatal pathway, substantia nigra, from the substantia nigra into striatum, okay, by D1's receptors and inhibits the indirect pathway by D2 receptor. So inhibition of inhibitory pathway is stimulation in the end. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, so the receptor direct and for the indirect it was D2. Okay, any questions here in desert ganglia?
Doc, can you summarize once? I'm getting a lot confused.
Okay, let me just give you summary of this entire discussion. The summary is that the basal ganglia help in motion, right? Okay. Hello. We have
Yes.
component of basal ganglia, lentiform nucleus, subthalamus. Okay, so we have indirect pathway and we have direct pathway.
That's why.
Direct pathway is basically going to stimulate your cortex. Indirect pathway inhibits your cortex.
The cortex.
Okay. Is it clear? Dopamine is going to stimulate your pathway, direct pathway more, while it's going to inhibit your inhibitory pathway, which is excitation in the end. So dopamine in the end lead to excitation of both of the pathways. That's the summary. Okay. Hello.
Yes, doc.
Yes.
Any questions?
So, sorry. Yes, question. So if indirect is an inhibitory, and then you're saying that dopamine is going to cause excitation on both pathway.
Mhm.
How does that work? Because I know you said that direct pathway is stimulatory. That's where you have increased
Okay. Okay. So we have D1
Yes.
receptor here and we have D2 receptor here, right? Whenever dopamine act on D1 receptor, it stimulate things, right? So in
Yeah.
that pathway, we have D1 receptor, dopamine is dumped. Okay, this pathway is stimulatory in nature and
Mhm.
I'm further stimulating this pathway. So in the end, I have stimulation, more stimulation, right?
Mhm.
Okay. While on the other hand, we have D2 receptor. Whenever dopamine act on D2 receptor, what happens? We are basically causing inhibition. So this is an inhibitory pathway. If I'm inhibiting an inhibitory pathway, it means it's excitation in the end,
Oh, okay, okay. Got
right?
you.
So in both of the pathways, it's causing excitation. Is it clear?
Yeah, it's like double negative, right?
Yeah.
Inhibiting
Yes,
an inhibitory pathway means
yes, it's a
that
double negative,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's
Dr.
discuss.
Flo,
Mhm.
please, in the direct pathway, where in which of the levels does the dopamine act? Because we've been mentioning glutamate, GABA.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a nigrostriatal pathway here we discussed, right? From substantia nigra, fibers are projecting directly into the putamen, right? So this pathway is basically your nigrostriatal pathway, which is dumping of dopamine on both of these D1 and D2 receptors in direct pathway and indirect pathway. Is it clear?
Yes.
Nigrostriatal pathway, from substantia nigra into striatum, which is the striated portion, or you can say putamen, right? Hello?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Let's discuss our next really, really important topic, that is blood supply of the brain. Blood supply of the brain. It's really important, and I'm going to make it really simple for you guys as well, right? Okay, so today we are going to finish off this entire blood supply, and tomorrow will be discussing. We are almost going to be done with neuroanatomy portion tomorrow. Then we'll be starting our pathology. Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
Dr. Ahmed, you mentioned that we will start Parkinson disease.
Sorry.
Parkinson, you mentioned Parkinson before. Parkinson's disease was the one you mentioned.
Sorry, I couldn't get you. Can you just please type it?
You, af- yeah, after you finish the pathways, you wanted to discuss Parkinson disease.
Okay. Yes. Okay. If you can just write it down, it would be really better for me because I haven't. Today I'm just not using my headphones. I couldn't understand things. Really sorry for that. Can anyone just write it for me? What doctor?
Yes.
I think she's saying that you did mention that you would start with Parkinson's, but then you also said right now that you will be finishing with the anatomy part today and blood supply of the brain stem. I think she wanted to clarify if you were still going to talk about Parkinson's today or you started when you're talking about pathology.
Okay, Parkinson is going to be done in pathology section in detail, right? As I mentioned that if you guys know this neuroanatomy, this is basically the neuroanatomy portion, right? So once you are done with this anatomy, these structures and everything, then we are going to be discussing entire pathology, right? So there things are going to make a lot of sense. I'm going to revise this entire pathway there, right? But you must know basal ganglia there. So that's going to be in our pathology section. Tomorrow our neuroanatomy is going to be finished, right? The blood supply, the hematoma, along with that, we are going to do the function of cerebellum. We did thalamus. Tomorrow we are going to hypothalamus. With that, we are going to start pathology section, right? Or pathology, okay? We are also going to be doing our brain stem as well tomorrow. So just get ready for that as well. Okay. But before discussing brain stem, you should know the blood supply. You should know different portion of your brain, because in the brain stem, I'll be just telling you the entire blood supply. That's really important to know, right? What is the blood supply of the brain? Remember, we have dual blood supply. Dual blood supply. Okay. So, Mark, can you please fix your mic? A lot of noise in it. Hello? Hello?
Ah,
Okay. That's great. Okay, so we were discussing blood supply of your brain. So just keep one thing in mind that the brain have dual blood supply, right? We'll be discussing what do I mean by a dual blood supply. So one of the blood supply is going to be coming from the vertebral arteries and the other one is going to be coming from the carotid arteries, right? So let's discuss the vertebral first, okay? If you guys remember, we did a subclavian steal syndrome. Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
Subclavian steal syndrome, right?
Brain stem
So
syndrome, yeah.
we know that we have our subclavian, and from the subclavian, basically vertebral arteries are going to arise, right? And okay, let me just draw it. Not here. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so we know that we have subclavian arteries, and from the subclavian arteries, basically the vertebral arteries arises, right? And these vertebral arteries are going to join with one another at ponto, yes, medullary junction, right? What do we mean by pontomedullary junction? Pontomedullary junction is basically the junction between your pons and medulla, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so as they combine in pontomedullary junction, they would just combine and they would be just forming a single artery, which is known as basilar artery, right? This basilar artery is going to be moving through the pons, giving some small pontine branches. Okay, and from the pons, these basilar artery are going to give some branches, which I'm going to discuss in a bit. But in the end, they are going to be dividing as posterior cerebral arteries, which is going to supply the posterior cerebrum, the occipital lobe. Is it clear? Hello? In the
Yes, yes.
mention, let me just discuss different branches which this entire vertebral artery is going to give, right? So as they combine here, they're going to give certain branches, which is called as anterior spinal arteries, just like that, right? So here from the vertebral arteries, we're going to be having a branch which is called as anterior spinal artery. So what is the function of anterior spinal artery? You can see if this is your spinal cord, so it's going to supply the two-third of your spinal cord, right? So we know that here we have a fissure within the spinal cord where your anterior, basically where your anterior cerebral, anterior spinal artery is going to run, right? So anterior spinal artery is going to supply that two-third of the width of your spinal cord. That's really important. So one branch anteriorly into anterior spinal artery and two branches of posterior spinal artery, which is going to supply the remaining one-third of your spinal cord. Is it clear? Hello?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so these were the branches. Okay, then what happens that from the vertebral arteries, or either in some of individual from the vertebral arteries, or in other group of individual from the basilar artery, it would just give a branch called as pica. What is pica? Pica is posterior inferior cerebral artery, right? So we know that here we are going to be having our cerebellum as well, right? So this artery is going to be supplying which aspect of your cerebellum? You can just simply imagine the posterior inferior aspect of your cerebellum, right? The posterior and inferior aspect of cerebellum is going to be supplied by PICA, posterior inferior cerebral artery. That's so simple, right? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So then we are going to be having our next branch, which is going to be your ICA. What is ICA? It's going to supply the anterior inferior portion of or aspect of your cerebellum, right? Anterior and inferior, right? So we discussed posterior and inferior. Now anterior and inferior aspect of cerebellum is going to be supplied by pica. In the middle, it's going to give some pontine branches, which is going to supply, basically supply the pons, right? Okay. Here, the third branch I would say is going to be your superior cerebral artery. So what's the function of superior cerebral artery? It's going to supply the superior aspect of your cerebellum, right? And in the end, they would just divide as posterior cerebral artery, not cerebral artery. Keep that in mind, which is going to supply the posterior
Cerebral.
cerebrum, right? So we are going to discuss, the exact, from where do these branches arise and which parts of the brainstem are going to be supplied by these arteries in tomorrow's lecture, that is brainstem, right? Brainstem. Okay, we'll be discussing the lesions, what will happen if we have, this problem. So let me just give you an overview again. From the subclavian, we have our vertebral arteries. They are going to join at which junction? At the ponto.
Pontomedullary junction.
Yes. So give one branch, which is anterior spinal artery, which supply the anterior two-third, two branches in the posterior aspect, which is going to supply that remaining one-third of your posterior aspect of your spinal cord, right? Then it's going to move upward as a basilar artery. It's going to give pica, posterior inferior cerebral artery, ica, anterior inferior cerebral artery, then superior cerebral artery, and in the end, posterior cerebral artery. Is it clear? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so this was the first blood supply, which is basically supplying the brain. The next one is going to be, the carotid system. Carotid system supplying your brain. So let's discuss about the carotid system, right? Okay.
So sorry to clarify, the left and right vertebral joins together to form the basilar artery. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then basilar now gives us the branches that supplies the cerebral and other parts of
Yes.
the brain. Okay.
Okay. So we have internal carotid arteries that is going to enter into carotid canal, right? So we have, okay, let's suppose these are your internal carotid. So these internal carotid arteries are basically going to enter in the brain. You have a canal, which is known as carotid canal, right? And as they enter into carotid canal through a foramen called as foramen lacerum, they're going to, okay, this is your carotid canal. This is your foramen lacerum. It is just going to move out and it's going to move through the cavernous sinus, right? So we'll be discussing cavernous sinus in detail as well. What are sinuses? We already discussed, right? So this carotid artery is going to move just like that. Okay. So on the both sides. Okay. Like for example, if this one was your right, this is going to be your left one, moving just like that. Okay. Is it clear? Okay. So the terminal portion of this branch is going to give anterior cerebral artery. Like it's going to run all around. Okay. It's going to run all around your cerebrum, the anterior portion, and it's going to be called as anterior cerebral artery, right? Which is going to supply the superior medial aspect of your brain. Is it clear? The superior medial aspect of your brain,
Yes.
right? Just like that, which is your anterior cerebral artery, right? It's also going to give certain branches called as ophthalmic branches to your eye, ophthalmic branches. And here it's going to give another branch, which is your middle cerebral artery, right? Your middle cerebral artery. In between both of these anterior cerebral artery, you have anterior communicating artery, which is the most common site of getting your baryaneurysm, right? Hello? Okay, let me just draw different aspect of your brain, right? For example, if this is your brain, right? Okay, let me just draw your brain. Okay, if this is your brain, your pons and spinal cord, so you can see that this portion of your brain is going to be supplied by anterior cerebral arteries.
Mm.
If you guys remember the homunculus, if this was your brain, we discussed the homunculus, right? So this superior middle portion is going to be supplied by anterior cerebral artery. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
And the homunculus, basically, here we were having lower legs, urinary retention, remember, and gait.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes. Yeah.
let's say that if anterior cerebral artery is, gone, so blood supply to these areas are going to be gone, and we are going to be having problems with movement, with urinary retention, wakey, wobbly, and wet kind of. Remember?
Yes.
Okay. Just keep that in mind. Okay, and it would be on contralateral side. If the right side anterior communicating artery is affected, so problems are going to be seen on the left side because in the end we have decussation. So it's going to be on contralateral side. Really important. You are going to be having a lot of MCQs on that as well, right? Okay. Then you have your middle cerebral artery. So how the middle cerebral artery is going to run, right? We know that if this is your cerebrum, we have a fissure here, if you remember, right? A fissure here. That was, basically. So let me just open this brain, right? How do I open the brain? You can see that. Let me just open this fissure, right? So middle cerebral artery is going to pass through this fissure, and it's going to move back at the lateral aspect of your brain. Does that make sense or not? Right?
Yeah.
Like you can see this middle cerebral artery, it's going to be moving through that fissure and it will be just coming out at the lateral aspect of your brain, right? Like for example, if let me just open up this fissure, right? So once I just open up this fissure, you're going to be having structure just like that. Okay. Okay. Okay, I have just opened up this fissure, right? It means that middle cerebral artery is going to be moving just like that, okay? So if this was your entire anterior and, so it's going to be moving just like that. The middle cerebral artery, I have just opened this fissure and it's going to be supplying the lateral aspect of your brain. Is it clear?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
And we discuss on the lateral aspect of your brain, what on the homunculus, what do we have? We have areas for, upper hand, face, speaking, remember? So it means that whenever the middle cerebral artery is gone, it's going to be giving us problems of, difficulty in facial movement, difficulty in speaking, difficulty in moving your hands, right? So that's really important. And in the middle, this middle cerebral artery is going to give a lot of branches in the mid, and these branches are going to supply your internal capsule, which are also known as lenticulostriatal branches, which we discussed, right? So they also form a kind of striatum. No, that's what they are called as lenticulostriatal branch. Is it clear? So this is your middle cerebral artery, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let me just draw the the blood supply which you already did. That's your okay. You can see vertebral arteries joining with one another, basilar artery, pica, ica, pontine, superior, cerebral, and in the end we are having that Posterior, right?
cerebral.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
cerebral.
Okay. Okay. Just keep one thing in mind. We discussed this is your anterior communicating artery, most common site of berry aneurysm, right? So we can have berry aneurysm here due to hypertension. Okay, we also have another artery which is basically called as posterior communicating artery. So posterior communicating artery basically joins these portion, right? It's like that. Okay, these are your posterior communicating arteries. Is it clear? Hello?
Okay.
Which is basically joining your posterior cerebral arteries with the branches of your internal carotid, right? It can be due to directly attached to these internal carotids. Is it clear? Yes or no? Hello.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So you can see. Have you just observed one thing? We have a circle here, right? Let me just draw a circle. Can see? Okay, with green, right? That these arteries are basically forming a circle. As they are just moving, you can see it's a circle, right? Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you guys following me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
we are.
Yes,
Basically called as
Yes.
circle of Willis.
Dr. Willis.
Let me just write here. So we have our anterior communicating artery in the circle of Willis. Then we have internal carotid, which are basically joining at with posterior communicating artery, to posterior communicating artery with your posterior cerebral artery or circle of Willis. Is it clear? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions in blood supply?
Doc, can you please summarize the that portion again where we had the berry aneurysm?
Okay. Berry aneurysm is basically a pathological dilatation of your blood vessel, right? Okay, that's called as berry aneurysm, right? In the brain, it's called as berry aneurysm. And in 60% of cases, the berry aneurysm occurs in anterior communicating artery, which is basically an artery joining your both of your anterior cerebral arteries. That's all. Okay. Sometimes it can rupture, and as it get ruptured, it can lead to your brain ischemia as well, right? Stop. Is it clear? Which we'll be discussing in our pathology section. Is it
Thank you,
clear?
Doc.
Okay, let's just discuss this entire blood supply from our first shade. Okay. Okay, what is your homunculus? Okay, we already know the homunculus. Can you just please tell me the page number? What happened?
It's at
Hello, can you?
514.
It's a 540.
14.
5. Okay, so it's your blood supply. Okay. Okay, so we did this one. Let's discuss the circle of Phillips and blood supply, right? Okay, let me just do it. Okay, circle of Willis, anastomosis linking anterior and posterior circulation. Okay, main cerebral perfusion in case of occlusion and stenosis of major cranial arteries. Okay, so you can see this is your vertebral arteries. These are your vertebral arteries. Okay, your anterior spinal arteries. Okay, hello.
Yeah.
And I just told you in some cases the pica would just arise from the vertebral arteries, right? So in this case, like in some individual, it may arise from your basilar, but in some individual, it can arise from the vertebral, right? From the vertebral pica, which is going to supply the posterior inferior cerebral. Then you have your ica, okay, your basilar, pontine branches, superior, cerebellar, and posterior cerebral. Is it clear?
Yes.
Any question? Okay. So you can see that this was basically your middle cerebral just moving and giving innervation to the lateral portion of your brain. Okay. This was your internal carotid giving these ophthalmic, right? Okay, and this is anterior communicating artery, most common site for your, okay, this for a berry aneurysm, anterior communicating, and towards your anterior cerebral, which is going to supply the the superior middle aspect of your cerebral. You can see, and in the end you have posterior cerebral, and this is your circle of Phyllis. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay. So this was all about your blood supply, and we're going to discuss each and every blood supply individually in different parts of your brain, right? Okay. So what's the next topic which we'll be discussing? Yes. Okay. Next topic which we are going to discuss is your meninges, right? Meninges, right? So let's do this meninges from our first aid. On which page do we have meninges? Hello?
506. Still.
Okay, 5 or 6. Okay. So we know that we have certain protective covering on your brain that are basically your meninges. We already know that, right? So we have three different layers of them. We have dura mater, we have arachnoid, and we have pia mater. Pia is the thin, which is going to be close, present in close proximity with your brain matter. You know, then in the middle you have arachnoid, and outside you have dura mater, right? That is close to the skull, right? Okay, so you can see that CSF is going to be flowing in the subarachnoid space. We already know that. So we have epidural space. What is epidural space? Between the dura, right? So as we know that the dura further can be divided into two layers, the periosteal layer, right? And in certain places it's going to separate from one another. So we are going to discuss epidural hematoma in detail, which can just lead to a formation of hematoma in epidural space, right? In the skull, in the vertebral column containing fat and blood vessels. So it's a site of blood collection associated with middle meningeal artery. Whenever you have epidural hematoma, it's one of your UWorld MCQ. Which artery is going to be damaged, which is leading to this hematoma? That is middle
Middle
meningeal
meningeal
artery.
artery.
Middle meningeal artery, right? So that was all about today's session. And hope so you guys enjoyed the session. And tomorrow we are going to continue our further discussion. So those who are new and the marathon, and those who have any questions, they can stay in the meet. Those who already know everything, they can just. Okay.
What did you say, doctor? I didn't hear.
Okay. So those who are from the new batch, right, from new marathon batch, and they have certain queries, so they can just ask me now. And those who do not have any queries, they can just.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye
It was a beautiful class.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was.
bye.
Mhm.
Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Okay, so those who are from the old marathon, are you guys here? From new marathon, sorry. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we are just making an LMS, right? So let me just show you how this LMS is going to work, right? And I'm here to clarify your questions if you guys have, any kind of confusion. So basically we are working on that LMS, right? So let me just share my screen first, okay? Because I want to just modify things here in this platform. Can you guys just see my screen? Hello? Okay. So I'm basically transitioning all of this study course into LMS, online LMS, right? Because we believe that it's going to be more. And another thing, I'm also going to upload the entire recorded sessions from of me, of Dr. Moa, of Dr. Hassan into the LMS as well, right? So this is how your LMS is going to look like. Can you guys just see my screen? Hello? And it's basically taking some time because, okay, one thing, those who haven't sent me the details, which I have mentioned for elements, just please send me the details. Like our team is just working a lot on, uploading the entire data of students into this LMS, right? So you can see that in the LMS, once you just, this is your next generation USMLE LMS.com. Once you just enter, so this is basically the main admin dashboard, which I am going to manage, right? So you can see that here we are going to be having the details of entire students who have admitted in the course, right? And along with that, the live sessions are going to be took here, right? Live classroom. So you have to click on these live classrooms, once you are done with it, and you will be given your own login, right? Your own login details. So first of all, you guys have to come here and log into our application, right? Are you guys getting me? Next generation usmdlms.com. And there you are going to be having like just a dashboard just like that. Okay, so it's a kind of okay. Okay, so just give me a second. Let me just log into LMS. Okay, so I'll just make an extra video on this LMS. But those who are from the new marathon, they have certain questions, certain confusions. So can you guys just please let me know what are your questions so that let me just clarify all of those doubts. Hello? 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 Anyone? Okay, so a lot of students are asking, they're confused. Okay, is there any separate group for U work? Okay, let me just tell you that as well, right? So the U work classes from now onwards are going to be shared in the group, right? In the group. In future 1 or 2 weeks, everything is going to be transferred into LMS, right? I'm just working on that. So you are going to be having U work session, every session here in the LMS, but currently you can just use those groups. So it would just take 1 to 2 weeks to transition all of the students into LMS, just make them understand how to use the LMS. And along with that, I'm also going to provide all of the recorded sessions of the course, right? Because I have seen that some of the students have difficulty taking the classes. They have some other, commitments. So what I have planned that entire recorded sessions are going to be available in a bit, right? It will just only take 1 to 2 weeks again, right? So you are going to log in to that, and the access to entire course is going to be free for each and every student, right? Let me mention that again, right? So if you guys are watching any video that would be present here of Dr. Maheen, Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Muaz, Dr. Hasnain, and we are also just recruiting some other tutors as well in order to give you a good experience, right? So those who have already recruited in the course, they are going to be given the entire plan of 120 days all at once. Along with that, the entire recorded sessions are going to be given to them, and the access to these live classes are also going to be there for them. Okay. And another thing, a lot of students are confused that when the new batch is going to start and what's happening. So let me just guide you about that. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. So currently with this marathon, we are in neuro, right? After neuro, we are going to do GI, repro, and after that, the second phase is going to start. That is psychiatry, biostate, and biochem. So the neuro would just take 1 week for us, 7 days. GI would take a total of 10 days and a total of 6 to 7 days of repro. And you can just count 3 days for psychiatry, biostates, and for biochem, you can count 6 days, right? So those students who are from the new marathon, you can consider that your marathon is started from neuro, right? You can consider that things are started here because before recruiting you, before starting from cardiovascular again, so we basically take these sessions in a cycle, right? Once this biochemistry is finished, again, cardio is going to be started, right? So you have joined here in neurology, right? But these, systems, you guys are going to do that, right? In order to become used to study, in order to know things, how things are working, how sessions are working, who are going to be your mentor, in order to get into LMS. So these are going to be your days in order to know things about the platform, right? So do consider that your marathon is started, right? Once we just start our next cycle from cardiovascular, we are going to go through these systems again. You guys can go through these systems again. You guys can have recorded session plus live session, right? So you are going to be going through these topics again, right? Once we start from cardiovascular, as we have already just dropped in the entire plane. So again, we are going to discuss this neuro. So it would be a positive point for you in order to gain, stamina, your study stamina, in order to know things. So once we are just starting with cardiovascular, things are going to be more serious for you guys, right? Because like I have listened, a lot of students are getting confused with UBER. A lot of them are getting confused. Oh, neuro is this and that, right? With micro session, all of these things are going to be done again with you guys. But in order to keep you on track, in order to keep you studying, this strategy basically works a lot for us, right? So we basically recruit our students in the neuro for the next page, and we basically they become used to the platform, they become used to the tutors, and they started gaining their those who haven't studied since long. So they basically start studying. So once the cardiovascular system is coming, you guys might already have done at least 2 to 3 systems, right? That would be an extra point for you guys, because neurology is really important, GI is even more important, and repro, these are really important subjects, and you have to do them again and again, right? Okay, so any questions? Okay, so we are going to upload all of the recorded session in a proper LMS. There's going to be, a proper software for that. So we are currently working. I've just showed you the progress as well. So this is the progress. We have just completed our admin side. Now there's some few things are left on the student dashboard side. So once entire things are completed, we are going to make this thing live for you guys, right? It will just take, hardly 2 weeks to just get everything on track, right? So even though if if the tutors aren't available on a certain day, you can also watch the recorded sessions as well, right? And along with that, I'm also just trying to recruit some more, good tutors for the side subject. I'm going to do this like this entire stuff with you guys. I have those recorded sessions. I'll just try to improve that as well, and integrate some other sessions. But that's going to be a plus point for you guys for the next marathon who have recruited, like all the recorded sessions are going to be available. Since you know that a lot of students are working, sometimes it's really hard for them to attend the session. So you'll be having the entire course all in advance, right? So that's our future, plan which we are working on. Okay. Yes, we are doing each and everything in a system. Like we start from anatomy, then we do physiology, then we do pharmacology, then we do basically the pathology, pharmacology, assessment, boot camp, you know. So we do everything, right? Don't worry about the pharmacology section. Each and everything is going to be done. Not a single thing is going to be left in the first aid, pathoma, and if there is some other interesting resource, as now we are doing Dr. Najeeb lectures, right? So here we are going to understand things. It's not only about winding up things and just going through the first aid that yes we have done it. No, we're going to understand things. Okay. So not only the pathoma or first aid, we are also going to do some extra things as well, right? Like we did MSK from we use slides of BNB, right? So don't worry about that. In the end, our goal is not to finish off things. Our goal is basically to know things, right? And these recorded sessions, which we'll be providing, I'm going to crop them. I'm going to make them more beautiful. There's some editing, right? So it takes time. So access is going to be going to each and every student, right? So that was all about. If you guys have any other questions, you can ask. Hello. No questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, and see you in tomorrow's session. Okay. Bye bye.